Hello everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal, we do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Robin. And this fortnight on Books That Burn, we are discussing Firebreak by Nicole Kornher-Stace. For our factions, we have a pretty short list today. We have Mal, Jessa, 06, 22, and B. For our first topic, we have B and kidnapping. That is our best case scenario. Hopefully that is all that happened to her. There is speculation and a distinct possibility that she is also dead, but we don't know.
We don't have
that's
actual
part of why
evidence
we're talking about it.
Yeah. We can prove kidnapping. We cannot prove literally anything else. So
yep. Jessa and Mal were approached through an intermediary who then had them meet B in person. We're told that the intermediary is her sister, but we don't know. And meet her in this coffee shop. And the reason I'm telling you this is because 6 days later, maybe 6 or 7 days later, when Mal goes back to say, hey, you were gonna give us more money with things and stuff, she's not only is she not there, not findable, not like we expected her to live at the coffee shop or whatever, but the coffee shop is gone. It has been replaced by the ubiquitous company-run chain stores. And so that's, I don't want to spoil more details, but it's just,
right.
It's, and the person who conveys the information of supposedly how the replacement happened, based on the details they say, that switch happened 3 or 4 days before within a 7-day window. And so it's in a maximum of 4 days from when they were at this location, the entire building was, it's a small building, but the entire building was swapped out for a different building. And we never see B again.
We get Mal in there also just witnessing people not realize also.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I thought was interesting. Because that didn't have to be included. But Mal is in there figuring out what's going on. Where did this place go? Why are we missing? This is all different. And we see another customer come in, visibly take a step back and go, what? This was coffee. And, so it's not, we get definitive proof that Mal isn't at the wrong location. Something, this is clearly what is happening.
Yeah, it's not a memory issue.
Right.
It's not that she messed up the map. Like, this was a coffee place. And now it's not.
Yeah, and now it's not. And we're seeing other customers walk in expecting coffee and then recover because it's just gone.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the company store also sells coffee, but, like, it's not the same place. It's not the only sells coffee place. And I think, like, this is weird as a minor character spotlight because B serves as an early warning of
B is kind of a plot kickoff.
Might happen. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Absolutely plot catalyst. So we don't have much of her as a character, and like we'll get to this in the wrap up, but I do think it would be a very different book without the specter of this event hanging over, like, at least the next 2/3 of the narrative. By the time we're in, like, the very end of the book, like, they're not worried about that anymore. But
got bigger problems
for a lot of
deal
it
with.
Yeah, bigger problems. But while we haven't hit those bigger problems yet, this is, like, the vision of kind of what they have as, like, the worst case scenario of what could happen to them. So then when what actually happens jumps past this, then, like, oh, this is serious. I thought the worst thing they could do was make me vanish. Like, that, it kind of sets that up.
I mean, to be fair, they actively talk about that, and Mal points out that being loud and being visible and being, too much for them to disappear without people noticing is good. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually take steps. It's not just, it's serious now. It's that they took actual preventative steps to prevent that thing that they saw from happening.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they were thinking of it as a likely undesirable outcome, and they were trying to make it not happen. And that's, I mean, it is neither the only thing that was possible nor the only thing that then, like, actually does happen. So, like,
the thing that gets me with the thing that I was thinking about this character. So, speaking of, taking steps to prevent things from happening, Mal and Jessa and also B all take steps to prevent the government from knowing, to prevent the company from knowing.
Mm-hmm.
They take out their eyewear, their lenses that connect them to the system. They travel on foot. They take unmarked cars. They do what they can to be outside of range. They meet in the coffee shop with B, which is run by her sister and not by the company, presumably. And they take all these steps thinking that they're safe. And then B just straight up vanishes without ever paying them anything because they're just gone too quickly.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the reasons that I pushed to have us talk about this. This topic was my idea. Because there's so much of this, well, I'm going to prevent the surveillance that I know about, and I'm going to mitigate the consequences that I know about, et cetera, et cetera. And at every step, the company has just better surveillance, better technology, better understanding of what is happening. And it's very much a case of, like, they don't know that they're outclassed until it's too late. But this, and it's you kind of read it going, well, maybe she got caught. And then sure, B vanished, but Mal and Jessa didn't. It's kind of one of those where it's like, yeah, they know, the company knows exactly how much to do to keep this from being a problem. Yeah. And it is interesting because, they like Robin said, they kind of go through the book, like, oh no, what happened to B could happen to us. And then they realize, like, probably not actually, because they're so much more useful alive and visible than dead.
Yeah.
Until they're not, and then they just get locked out and they have nothing.
Yup.
Which actually is a good dovetail into our next topic.
Yes, it is. on to Mal and dehydration, or as it's otherwise known, almost all of the characters in the book with dehydration. This is a corporate-run hellscape dystopia. And the corporation...
Really? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah! Yeah! When I tweet about it, I use a slightly different words with more swearing to basically say this.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, yes.
On Twitter?
I know.
Does Twitter know?
Where we don't have to be acceptable for iTunes? Oh my goodness. All right.
Oh, I was making the joke about Twitter being a mega corporation. It's fine.
Yeah. So the company that we kind of mentioned, we talked about company store, that company is a water company. And so in the setup of this world, this city is controlled by a water company, and the other giant corporation that controls the other half of cities in the U.S., or what's left of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it isn't the U.S. anymore. It's countries, is a agriculture company. And so here you're not allowed to capture rainwater, and Mal guesses that in the other place you're probably not allowed to like have a tiny potted plant on your windowsill the way people can here if they can get the water to keep it alive.
It's important to note that the city that we're talking about is the only city in the entire country where they split power.
Mm-hmm. It's contested.
Yeah. So Mal is living in the part of the city that is water corporation controlled, but this city is the only remaining battleground that they know of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so like they have really, really strict water rations, but like I feel uneasy even using the word rations to describe what is going on. Like generally
it's not even a ration, it's a
It's not a ration, because like if you're rationing, it's because you have like a certain amount and you're trying to not let it run out under what are hopefully temporary circumstances of either like limits or uncertainty about future supply. This is, we have a bunch of water, we're making everyone pay out the nose for it, and well, if you can't afford enough water to stay alive, you can go to the dehydration clinic and then owe even more money that'll make you less able to buy water in the future because your money is tied up in trying to pay for the one time you almost died.
And something that I want to note with this, you having access to water, so there's a small ration that Robin's already mentioned that people get every day. But then you can also get water credits. But those credits are locked to your account of who you are as a person. Much in the same way that like if your social security and your identity is tied to a particular bank account, if you lose the ability to log in, you lose everything. And water credits are not the only type of currency, but it is a thing people use as currency. And one of the big kind of up and downs of this book is that feeling of safety with the water or the water credits, because we start out with these characters having nothing essentially. And then they get donations. They get people who want them to live and keep streaming and keep playing and doing the thing to be on the screen. And they get paid in water credits. And so suddenly they just have water hypothetically because they get a lot of credits. But then as things go on and they lose the ability to access those credits, not that they lose their credits, not that they run out or anything, but that they either, there's a couple of points where they physically can't go and get more water. They just aren't allowed to for whatever reason. Hashtag spoilers. And there's a couple other points where like they are locked out of the system, where they are unable to access the system again for various reasons. And like at that point, it doesn't matter if you have 2 million water credits, you are going to die anyway from dehydration because you're just not being allowed, or you can't physically get access to it.
Yeah, like they discuss something that happened previously where Mal was locked out of her account for 2 weeks and the others like lent her water, but without it, even though like just because she couldn't get into her account, even though her credits were good, she would have she could have died, and she definitely would have had to go to the dehydration clinic if she did manage to stay alive.
Right. And we see Mal a couple of times, like, carefully so as not to, you know, cause problems and, you know, and so that she doesn't run out herself, but, you know, just swiping credits to other people around her, just like, hey, you know what? I got a bunch streaming today and I don't want you to die either. So here. And, you know, which again seems very good. It's very nice. But then, you know, we still get this point where like all of these people are just not allowed to use them anyway. And it doesn't matter. I will say this book has a feel where if you like the Hunger Games,
I was
you
just
will like
thinking
this
about that.
You will like this book for a lot of the same reasons. It's not the same type of story.
The love triangle is not one of them. This got Airways Pro Tag explicitly like, no, I'm not interested in that. So if you liked the way we talked about the Hunger Games in our episode, you'll probably like this.
Well, and if you like stories of governments taking away or rationing basic supplies because they just feel like it, but they don't have to, and if you like stories of, you know, somebody trying to figure out what is going on behind the scenes, you'll like this book. And if you like, you know, dystopia novels where you have this one protag who's just trying to make it happen, you'll like this book. If you like the reluctant protagonist who really just doesn't want to do anything to do with it, you'll like this book. Like, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of similarities in structure.
But the Hunger Games didn't have a very interesting MMO that they could play. And this does.
I would argue that you're wrong.
Not saying the reader can play it.
I would argue that you're incorrect. Because the equivalent...
you think the entire games are the MMO?
Yes, the equivalent of the MMO in that book is the arena. That is literally the sport that people watch, and they can send you favors if they like you. Like, it's literally treated the same way.
You're right. You're right.
It's not life or death in this book, in the game.
Well,
but it's the equivalent.
It is by proxy, because if you don't please enough, then you might like not make it because you didn't. There's a couple steps.
If somebody punches your avatar, you don't die in real life, is what I am saying.
This is true. Okay, no, I do agree there.
But all I'm saying is these should go next to each other on the dystopia shelf.
As long as it's not like you only like the Hunger Games for the love triangle, I read this. You should like this.
I can't speak to any of that because I don't care about love.
Yeah, no, that's why you liked this one. It's great.
I did. I thought, well,
yeah.
Yeah.
All
right. The only other real point we want to hit before we move on to our third topic is that Mal gets kind of a culture shock moment because they actually go to the headquarters of the company and there's just decorative fountains and pretty green grass indoors. And
there's a decorative fountain, and then she goes into the next room, and Nicole, there is another decorative fountain. There's another one. And then when one of
and then she doesn't know how to access the water fountain to drink. And she has to be introduced to the concept of the water is not being paid for when you swipe your hand. It is a motion sensor.
Yep.
And it's just it's a very like, what is happening to me and why is everybody in my home dying if this is here moment.
I did like her narratively. I liked her frustration, like resignation, frustration reaction when she's at that place and the doctor looks at her and is like, oh yeah, you're dehydrated, and she's like, wonder why.
Oh, did you mean like everybody else who's not in this happy little corner?
Yeah, like if that person isn't used to seeing patients with dehydration, then they are only used to seeing rich and or literally works for the company patients. Like, oh my goodness. It was a neat little bit of world building, because of course that doctor would say that. Of course. And of course she is like, yeah.
She's like, where have you been?
Dude.
Everybody is dehydrated. Why aren't you dehydrated? What's your problem?
Yeah, that's a better question. Oh gosh, when the better question is, why aren't you dehydrated? Like, yeah, we've got some problems happening here. On to 22 and medical experimentation. All right, this topic contains major spoilers for the entire book. If you haven't read it yet, just be aware. Like, you can proceed, but please be aware that, like, this is major spoilers. So 22 is the name of one of the super soldiers who is used as PR, and they've got like virtual versions of them in the MMO, and like,
see, I don't like even calling them super soldiers.
Okay, trope-wise, that is what they are.
Trope-wise, that is what they are, but practically that's not true. They are failed
True.
experiments to try to enhance their abilities that left them with chronic conditions, including autoimmune conditions.
A thing we can now say, now that we are in the spoiler zone of
yes.
You were warned. Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
So they're not super soldiers. They are failed experiments who were supposed to be cool. And instead are just kind of stuck.
Their bodies are slowly killing them, and only one, well, from the organization's perspective, only one actually died in combat. Later, like, this is like said specifically and like they ask the corporate person for the number, and they say 1, and 22 corrects them to say that it's actually 2 because of spoilers. But of 48, only 2. And then, like...
And we don't even have confirmation that those... The one ambiguous one didn't die literally fighting that exact same corporation. Like, combat means literally anything where they're getting shot at by friendly fire or enemy.
Point.
Like, we have literally no clue that any of this was even, like, them being sent out to do anything. And in fact, we're heavily led to believe that it's not. In several cases.
At the point of this conversation, 1 alive, 47 dead, only 2 of which didn't die from autoimmune medical body went weird, had a bad reaction to the experiment, something. Like, that is a terrible ratio if your still twisted, still heinous goal was to create people who could just be super soldiers for battle out of these kids. And by the time of the narrative, they're like now physically adults, but like they haven't had the space to do any like adult things other than kill. Like it sucks. It really sucks. And we see some of the results of the experimentation. I mean, yeah, it's a lot. Like, I like how it's handled. I'm also trying to make sure to not mention details that came from other books that Nicole hasn't read. So, apologies if my thoughts are coming slightly more slowly about this. What did you think?
I thought that this book does a good job of intuiting that the reality that you are used to is the only one that you have a reference for.
Yes.
And I particularly with these experimentations and these kids being locked away and not allowed to really interact with people who are just out there. You know, we kind of mentioned it before with like, you know, this character in particular, 22, shows Mal how to use the motion sensor without paying credits for anything. And like, he's like, what are you doing? Why are you struggling? This is just a fountain. And she's like, what are you talking about, free water? That doesn't exist.
There's no just a fountain.
No, and it does a good thing. It does a good job of really highlighting those differences and like the way that these experiments are thought of, these kids are thought of, because to 22, this is just a thing that he has been trying to go through and not rage at and break apart for a long time. And to Mal, this is somebody who's been put on a pedestal and literally used as PR campaigns for the conflict between the two companies. That's how she knows who he is. She knows him as this sim this NPC that's been put in the game because he's fighting the fight to free them from the other company. And, then she discovers like, no, it's not only is that not what he is doing and not what happens, but he's literally just this discarded who was a child and now is 16, 17, 18, something like that. Oh no, I think he's 18. I think that's confirmed. He's just this
only 18. I'm picturing him as mid-20s.
No,
oh, gosh.
No,
nope.
He was 18 because she says 12 years ago you were 8 years old, right? Or no, maybe he's 20. But I don't remember the exact number. I remember in my head that he was 18. We could double check it later.
I think it was 8 and 12 together.
Was it 8 and 12? Okay.
Right.
But to her, like, he's this giant walking, talking advertisement who tells her, oh, hey, I'm a person and they hurt me. And she's like, what are you talking about? What is happening here? And, and then they have this really interesting interaction where she thinks that he's trying to ask her for help and he's just trying to, well, we don't know. We never actually got that closure. We never actually get that closure, but it's, he can't even communicate and say what it is he's trying to do. And, then he's just stuck until things happen later.
And I will say, like, with talking about characters being, like, how much the framing of their world as what's expected, like, affects how they're processing, like, literally what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like either of the two of them is the completely naive one.
Oh, no. They just have different experiences.
Yes, and as they crisscross in between the places where each of them is familiar, or where it's not familiar to either of them, like that changes, or like, as things come up. I do. I'm glad you pointed that out because I do like how that is handled. I liked the angle on how the experiments were discussed, and like there aren't a lot of details about exactly what they are. And the main thing that I'll say about that is if you liked this, you should read the author's back catalog. So if you're like, why didn't they tell us exactly? Go read the author's back catalog, please. Like, this is a standalone book. You can completely enjoy it as a standalone book. But if you don't want to be done with these characters, we don't necessarily have to be done with all of them when this book is over.
And which two books in the back catalog should they go after, Robin?
Archivist Wasp and Latchkey. And if you're listening to this after, 2022, it's possible that you came to this after having read something else by this author. But of what is available right now, Firebreak, Archivist Wasp, and Latchkey are all in the same universe. Reading the back of one after having read one of the others is good and fun and interesting, is what I'll say there. So, but with the experimentation, like, there were 48 kids for the program. By the time they're being used for PR, there are 11 alive. And because they wanted, like, the math to be great for, like, the PR stunt or whatever, they picked one of the recently dead kids to include in the merch, even though he was dead by the time that particular PR rollout happened, which is such like a callous and manipulative move on behalf of the company to be like, these are great heroes. They are such great heroes that one of them has already given their life for you, or whatever. I don't know how they spun it, but it has that kind of a feel.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
It's time to thank our awesome patrons who've pledged high enough to receive monthly shoutouts. That means this month our thanks go to Case Aiken. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And if you would like to join Case in keeping the show going, you can check us out on patreon.com/booksthatburn. On to the wrap-up and ratings for Firebreak by Nicole Kornher-Stace. For the gratuity rating for the kidnapping, it's off-screen. Like, we're guessing even that kidnapping is the right word for what happened. That's how off-screen this is.
Yeah. Off-screen... Do we want to just say off-screen, or do we want to say off-screen severe or off-screen moderate?
We have no details. Like, for this specifically,
yeah, that's
like,
fair.
If we have to guess that kidnapping is the right term,
That's fair. All right, just off-screen it is.
Yes.
Dehydration. Moderate.
Okay, because we
have no
like,
actual on-screen depictions. We just have, like, the characters being scared of it.
A lot of talking.
Yeah.
A lot of talking about it. And being thirsty, but okay.
And I'm going to say the medical experimentation is also moderate, again, because we don't actually have any details.
Yes. For the trauma, integral, interchangeable, or irrelevant, I feel like the kidnapping is... I think it's
interchangeable.
Either irrelevant or interchangeable.
Yeah. I think interchangeable because our protags needed something. It didn't have to be this thing, but they needed something to kick them into plot.
Yes, this is true. We needed an inciting incident.
We needed an inciting incident with clues of breadcrumbs for them to follow in any way, shape, or form. And that was this.
For the dehydration, bold move. I'm interested in saying interchangeable.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say irrelevant.
No. I think interchangeable because we already know the basic framework of the alternate version of this exact same scenario. There is another company who is restricting food instead of water.
Yeah, okay,
It's literally interchangeable.
Okay, that's fair. I wonder if we'll ever get a book from that side.
That would be very cool.
I just heard your advice. I just heard in your voice that like excitement shoot up. Like,
please.
Yes,
just please, yes, like please. You got 400 years between this and Archivist Wasp. Give us please something. So, just that'd be so great. That'd be great. Sorry, I'm just kind of squeeing about the possibility of that. That would be amazing. Okay, so, I think it's interchangeable because we literally know what, like, the other possible version of this is. Then, for the medical experimentation,
interchangeable?
Yeah, I think it is interchangeable.
Because again, we literally have the other alternative. We have the propaganda war story, medical, like, super soldier narrative. Like, we literally have the other option here already stated.
Yeah, Yes, we already know what the other possibility is. I mean, heck, they could have been robots, and some things would be different. But, for the general idea, I think interchangeable. For being treated with care. I think, I'm going to say, yeah, like, because if the general idea behind our care rating is like, how bad would this be for someone who's had that happen? Like, I understand someone vanishes and you never get any more details is its own kind of trauma. I also don't know how to treat that with any more care. So I'd say either yes or enough. Like,
I think yes.
Yeah.
I think there are ways it could have been treated with more care, but we would also need more details for that to happen.
Right.
And that would fundamentally
kind of
change.
Seesaw.
Yeah. So I think yes.
We have more details, but those details are treated with care. Like, that has diminishing returns pretty quickly. Okay, yeah, treated with care. The dehydration, I definitely think I want to say enough. Like, yeah, I do think enough, because as much as it is a book where writ large people don't have enough water, for a significant portion of the book, the character doesn't have to worry about that. And then it becomes very plot relevant when, like, she does, at the start and towards the end. But in comparison to some other things we've read, it's able to take kind of the active trauma is able to get a little bit in the background to deal with other trauma. But yeah, I do think the dehydration is treated with enough care. For the medical experimentation, I'm either going to say not enough or no, I think. Because we don't have a ton of it, but what is there pulls no punches.
I was actually leaning on enough because we have no details. Or very few details.
Yeah, you think enough. Okay.
For the same reasons that we said enough for dehydration, actually.
Okay, no, that makes sense. How clear is the moral directionality? I'm going to go with very clear. Like,
just as a recap, because we did say that we've recorded
more
than one episode today, so I'm going to say it again today. Our moral directionality, the way that we splice this out, we have clear, meaning the author clearly communicates to the reader and the consumer how we are supposed to feel, who we think is supposed to be right, and how clear-cut those lines are in who is doing the right thing and who is not. Muddy is when maybe we're not quite sure what the author wants, or sometimes it looks like we are supposed to root for a certain person, but then we're not later, and it's not as easy to tell, or there's a little bit of ambiguity, or maybe, characters take turns being right at different points, but it's not a clear direct line. And then Tangled, it tends to come up when it's everybody is right or everybody is wrong. And everybody has their own thing and they're right from their own perspective, or everybody is wrong and everybody is being terrible and that's just how it is. And there's no way to pick apart, the author doesn't even look like they're attempting to communicate to us that somebody is who we're supposed to be siding with in the situation. I think this is very clear, very clear cut.
Yes. Yeah. And with something being clear, the answer could clearly be that no one is right. But in this case, no, there's a definite
Yeah, if we get from the author that you are not supposed to side with these people, that's still clear.
Yeah.
But here we are very clearly supposed to side with our protagonist.
For the point of view for the trauma and aftermath, the kidnapping, we don't have the presumably kidnapped person's perspective. We just don't.
Right.
Mal is our point of view character for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is dehydrated but not medically experimented on. And so we get the perspective of the dehydrated person, but not of the victim of the experimentation.
I would like to also argue that we get a little bit of 22 on dehydration.
Oh.
We get his
okay.
reaction to, what? This is a problem? You had to do this? And it's not much of a reaction, but we still kind of get him filtered through Mal's reaction to his reactions. But
yes.
I would argue that we get a little bit of just the other side of, oh, this is a problem for people.
Weirdly, we don't really get his perspective on the experimentation because he does not want to talk about it. Like, most of what Mal finds out about it isn't through or from him, and like just most of it isn't, or it's like him existing and her observing and asking if she's right. Like, yeah. Then okay, so for the trope spotter for this is super soldier. There's a lot of ways to make a super soldier, but the general trope is you've got somebody who is enhanced to be super good at soldier stuff, and at minimum for the trope that has to be the intention, whether or not like it worked out. And so we have super soldiers running around for PR stuff virtually, and then super soldiers in person doing things and stuff for sometimes. Yeah, that's the trope. I would say that this trope is, Nicole, I would say this trope is integral to the plot.
I mean, the trope is...
Oh, yeah.
I still think that we shouldn't frame these characters as super soldiers.
No, but like the super soldier trope is...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, is what is going on in the book. Yeah. A deconstruction is still a use would be my my thought there.
Mm-hmm.
For your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book, first of all, what was non-traumatic? Second, what did you like?
You want to go out first or second?
Oh, I was asking you.
Oh, okay. My favorite thing was the clear depiction of body language in this book. Up to and not only, but including, when they meet 22 and, oh no, what was the other number that
6.
we meet in person? Is it 6?
It is 6. They talk about 8, but they meet 6. I'm very sure.
Okay. And, you know, they have very good descriptions with meaning of what people are doing and why, body language wise. But, you know, there's a couple of moments where they particularly outline these two characters, and there's just a very clear visual in my head that I relate to, and I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so a thing that I have been tracking is if there are twins or triplets, are they all alive at the end? It's been a side project of mine because I was noticing the high twin and triplet body count in stuff, including even some books that we have talked about in this podcast. And my favorite non-traumatic thing about the book is, as of the last sighting, the twins are okay. So, I mean, can't vouch for the long run how it's going to be to continue to live in this dystopia. But, like, they made it. Unless I really missed something, and if so, I apologize. But that, I appreciated that. Thank you so much for joining us for our discussion of Firebreak, and we will catch you in a fortnight. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as Heartbeat Art Co. and is used with permission. Our transcriptionist is Heather. Follow her on Twitter at MamaDragon20. We're proud members of the Certain Point of View Network. Find all the CPOV shows at www.certainpov.com. You can contact us on Twitter at BooksThatBurn or by email at booksthatburn@yahoo.com. Please consider leaving us a tip at ko-fi.com/booksthatburn or becoming a monthly supporter on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list, bonus content, including the second half of all interviews, and will receive a one-time shout-out. To get updates on our written reviews, recent episodes, and newly completed transcripts, subscribe to our fortnightly newsletter at buttondown.email/booksthatburn. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review wherever you're listening. This helps people to find the show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.